for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. We have one more day until the NBA Finals is set to start, so I'm very excited. So I already talked about everything that I really wanted to talk about, like all the main stories that are about the finals, everything else that you could possibly think of. So really, this segment is just going to be a lot of these segments are just going to be on the basketball news that's going on with the rest of the media, as well as some of the basketball news, just basketball news that's going on with the rest of the world that isn't just entirely on, NBA playoffs, because that's basically the narrative for these media outlets for NBA basketball, as well as just regular basketball. They're just so excited for the playoffs. They're highly anticipating them. And again, it's like one of those things that it gets talked about a lot more than a lot of the other stories that are going on around the basketball. Like this one, for instance, so the first segment is going to be talking about Jontay Porter and his gambling problems. Now, we talked about that a little bit in a previous segment, but now there's a little bit more to the story than what meets the eye. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about the Lakers drama. They're trying to get a new coach, and they seem to have a front runner for the job, as well as LeBron revealing how he feels about Kyrie Irving and the situation that he's in. Then in the third segment, we're going to shift over to the WNBA and talk a little bit about Angel Reese. She recently got fined in her last game for screaming some words that the referee just didn't like to hear, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. As well as going into the fourth segment, we'll talk a little bit about basketball players and volleyball recently, because an ex-NBA star, well, not really a star, but an ex-NBA player, he just recently clinched a spot with the Olympics volleyball team. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how NBA players could be some really good volleyball players. We also have a very special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. It's displayed right below the ticker on every single show segment. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the first segment, which is going to be about Jontay Porter and his little gambling incident that he's recently had, and he was recently sort of banned from the NBA and from ever participating in NBA basketball. This was the biggest reason and this was the only reason why he was suspended due to now it was apparently a lot bigger than what a lot of people thought, because in the beginning, I certainly thought in the beginning it was literally just gambling. Like, he was just betting on certain games. Obviously, these are games that the NBA just didn't really he shouldn't have bet on. Like, as a sports athlete, you shouldn't bet in any sort of competition whatsoever. It's one of the biggest taboos in most of sports, actually in all of sports, now that I think about it. So he didn't do it alone, at least according to this report. So a New York man was arrested on suspicion of placing bets on Jontay Porter in games that the Toronto Raptors forward was attempting to lose as part of a sports betting scheme, federal prosecutors said on Tuesday. This was the claim. And, I mean, obviously, when they put it like that, it sounds a lot bigger than what it actually was, which was literally just him gambling on these games. You can make a small story about that, he was just being unintelligent, and that was just a dumb decision, because I know a lot of sports where they get banned either indefinitely or for a year or so. I believe there was a football player who 2 years ago, he was suspended for a year due to his participation in sports betting. It wasn't confirmed whether he bet on his team, for his team, or against them, I don't think. But I do know he's faced like a lot of punishment. And this was sort of the same time where Deshaun Watson was getting all these accusations about sexual misconduct and things of that nature. And I mean, it's sort of at the time it seemed a little bit weird how the NFL would suspend somebody for gambling or allegedly gambling as much as that player did, as opposed to somebody who allegedly did this, that, and the other. But that's a completely different story. But one thing, and it's not one that I'm like entirely focused on because it is football and it was a while ago. But this is a lot different than just gambling on a game. This was planned. It was premeditated. It was something that it seemed like he and Porter were discussing for a while. So, according to the report, I'm trying to like look how to say his name. Long Phi Pham, or like with an alias Bruce, I guess you could say. Like with Bruce is in quotes, so I have no idea if that's like the name that he uses for the United States. I don't know what it is, but we'll just call him Bruce for now. He's a 38-year-old from Brooklyn. He was taken into custody on Monday after being stopped at JFK International Airport in New York, where he was about to take a one-way flight to Australia before authorities detained him and charged him with conspiring to defraud a sports betting company. That is a very huge accusation, and that is, I mean, the fact that it would warrant him leaving the country, essentially, because like he was a one-way flight to Australia. It means, like, at least from my perspective, it sounds as if, he knew what was coming to him and he was just trying to get away as soon as possible with however much money he obtained from the gambling. And it ultimately didn't work. So, obviously, Jontay Porter, he received a lifetime ban from the NBA in April for disclosing confidential information to sports bettors, limiting his own participation in one or more games for betting purposes and betting on NBA games. So, this was the quote, this was the reason why he was banned from the NBA for life. Porter supposedly owed Pham and three others large sums of money. Now, Pham, like Bruce, same person. So I don't know how he could owe these people that much money due to the sports betting losses. And the co-conspirators told Porter that he could rid himself of those debts by leaving games early to ensure that prop bets on him were cashed. So I guess, like, since he was in debt and he had no idea how to repay his debt, this was how they decided to go about it. And it's a little bit weird because in my mind, these NBA players, these NBA athletes, they're making so much money. How is it possible that they could owe other people even more money than what they already have? It boggles my mind. It's a very odd situation that he found himself in because, again, I have no idea why he owed all that much money, and I have no idea why this was the form of payment, especially when you have a brother as well in the NBA who is making a lot more money than you are on his ridiculous extension deal that he signed a few years ago. And not only that, his position in the league is a lot more secure and was a lot. It's easy to say is now, but it was a lot more secure with his brother than it was with him. So if anyone, I find it odd how he didn't try and go to his brother and ask to sort of help him with the situation. But that's not what happened. So federal prosecutors, they said that Pham knew Porter was going to come out of Toronto's game against the Clippers on January 26th, leading him to place bets related to Porter's performance that were sure to hit. So Porter played 4 minutes, didn't score, exiting due to what he said was an eye injury. So Pham and the three suspects that are on the loose, according to this article, made over $1 million in profit, according to the United States Attorney's Office. The bets were also made on Porter for a March 20th game against the Sacramento Kings, a contest that Pham and the co-conspirators reportedly wagered on at a casino in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Porter left the contest after 3 scoreless minutes, citing an illness. So obviously, this is a very peculiar situation that Jontay Porter found himself in, and they had a very peculiar way of going about it. So in a way, obviously, like, this is something that you should never do, but these guys, they seem to try to outwit the system, I guess you could say. Like, that's sort of what it feels like when reading the report and reading these accusations. That's what it seems like. I mean, because again, trying to, as per what the article says, defraud a betting company, and like, let me just go ahead and look at the report, just to make sure that I said it properly. Yes, like, I mean, doing what he did is like, defraud a sports betting company. That's a very, very, like, tough accusation, and it's one that shouldn't be taken lightly. And it's like, they're trying to be a little smart, trying to allegedly try to be a little smart, work behind. They have a man inside, so they have insider information. But at the same time, it's not really that smart to do it in that many increments. Like, I mean, making that much money off of Porter bets alone, because I'm certain that they put in a lot of money for the bet to cash in. And, the fact that they put that much money, it sort of made it a little bit too obvious, and I feel like it sort of pinpointed the search down a little bit farther, given the who was betting on these accounts, and like what kind of bets were being placed, because they found one. There obviously, like, there's a few more apparently that were involved in this little debacle. So it was Fam and three others. So it seems like, it was a whole group decision for Jontay Porter, and along with these people. That's sort of what the article is entailing, and that's sort of what I got from reading it. So that's basically all that I have to say. We don't know the other accomplices. We only know about one. So basically, with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment, where I talk about some Lakers drama, their new coach, which seems to be JJ Redick, and as well as LeBron's feelings towards Kyrie Irving. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we're going to talk a little bit about some Lakers drama, as well as, particularly, LeBron and his opinions with Kyrie, as well as JJ Redick and how he's potentially going to be the next head coach for the Lakers. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcspodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcspodcast.net. Whew, that sun is hot. You guys on the podcast can't see what I'm dealing with right now, but I got the sun beaming at me directly at the center of the skyline. It is crazy hot, but aside from that, let's go ahead and talk about the Lakers and specifically LeBron. Obviously, like, whenever I talk about the Lakers, got to talk about LeBron and his relationship with Kyrie. So, obviously, LeBron has some of the utmost respect for Kyrie. He is one of the most gifted, talented players that the NBA has ever seen. By far has the best handles that the NBA has ever seen. You simply cannot talk about basketball without talking about Kyrie Irving. As much as the NBA wants to sort of shield him off, you just can't. Like, he's just too good to be shielded off. You can, if you guys remember when Kyrie was on the Brooklyn Nets, the media was really out to get him, and I was on like the media side at that point, thinking like, yes, Kyrie is this, Kyrie is that, and Kyrie is not good for the team, or Kyrie is just hurting the team. He's making it look bad. Because I genuinely, when he was on the Nets and he wasn't playing games, I thought it looked really bad. I do not like it when anyone sits out of a game that they can willingly play, especially if it's for my team. And we find out that, I mean, obviously, like, the story between Kyrie and LeBron, it's a little bit shaky. Like, you don't really know exactly, like, what to believe, what to think of the little situation. So what happened was Kyrie in 2017, I'm assuming since he was, like, here's my theory, like, because I have a theory as to why this relationship is the way it is, why there's not as much beef as a lot of people think there is with between these two players. So in 2017, Kyrie, he requested a trade to go to the Boston Celtics. I think because he was rather young and inexperienced, immature, and maybe a little bit full of himself ever since he won that championship and hit the game-winning shot. He sort of felt like he could be the number one star on a team, and that's why he requested a trade, so he can be that number one option. But ultimately, it didn't work out. He matured. He actually, in, I believe, 2019, when his second year with the Boston Celtics, he had, how do I say this? He had a sort of moment where he mentioned on an interview where he called LeBron and he apologized to how immature he was acting, and he didn't realize how this led to that. And I feel like in that moment he realized, wow, it was like, now I'm sort of experiencing the same thing that that LeBron must have experienced, so I gotta call him. So I really think that him leaving was sort of just like, Kyrie's maturing in the league. And once he left, he realized that being that number one option is not entirely suited for him, and he could find greater impact as a second option on a team that already has a really good alpha. Because, I mean, playing alongside LeBron and still being a ridiculous scorer the way he was, I mean, he was averaging 30 in the finals with LeBron James. I mean, that, like, it was a ridiculous duo, and I guess he realized that he could provide the team with that much service if he was a second option. It's maturing for him, and obviously, like LeBron, he's always wanted to play with Kyrie Irving, and who wouldn't want to play with Kyrie Irving, because that's simply how good LeBron genuinely is. So, and LeBron, he said it on his podcast with JJ Redick. He was saying that he was really upset that Kyrie isn't his running mate right now in the NBA, and honestly, like, it would fit fantastically. Like, given how well Luka and Kyrie have fit, I mean, it makes no surprise that they fit really well, because Kyrie played with LeBron first and knows, like, exactly what he has to do to be productive when you have a juggernaut on the offensive side of the ball like Luka or LeBron. Because, like, while they aren't the same player, they definitely can put up ridiculous stats. I mean, 40-point triple-doubles, and it's basically their bread and butter, especially in the postseason. And it makes sense. Like, it makes sense why this duo is working so well, and obviously it leaves LeBron a little bit bitter, because of all the members on the big three with Brooklyn, Kyrie is the one to make it to the finals. And, like, I mean, it's like, what could have been? Now, I also recently read a report that the Lakers, they offered Russell Westbrook and a few first-round picks, I believe, for Kyrie Irving But the Nets were reluctant to even allow him to join the Lakers. Like, literally, the GM of the Nets was like anything but the Lakers. And imagine what could have been, Kyrie on the Lakers teaming up with LeBron and being the same dynamic duo that they've always been. That would have been, I mean, I'm sure they would have made the finals, no questions about that. And Kyrie would have definitely given the boost that they needed in terms of offensive production, especially when you weren't getting any from D'Angelo Russell in the postseason. Now, another thing to talk about with the Lakers is that JJ Redick seems to be like the front runner for the new head coaching job of the Lakers. So that podcast that they both have, it was exactly what I thought it was. It was an interview, a job interview, because LeBron, he said before that his podcast wasn't at all related to the empty coaching position, yet here is JJ Redick, who was on his podcast and is now the front runner to be the head coach for the Lakers. It seems a little bit too good to be true, and it seems a little bit, just too good for it to not be all part of LeBron's plan. Like, I genuinely, and we all know how, LeBron, he likes to say certain things to sort of like, and obviously they aren't going to admit to any sort of recruitment behind the cameras because I believe that's tampering. I'm not entirely sure if that falls under tampering, honestly, but I do know that talking about these kind of things behind the camera's backs, there's a reason why they aren't talked about in front of the camera. It's because they don't want that news getting out. So either they just didn't want the news getting out or they didn't want to get hit with a tampering. And honestly, like, a lot of that happens so randomly. Like, and especially like with high level athletes. I remember one time in the NFL, Tom Brady was allegedly tampering with the Miami Dolphins. It resulted in the Dolphins losing one of their picks. And these tampering allegations, they're just allegations, but they wouldn't say this on camera. So I'm just throwing that up in the air. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that that's what they were. I'm not saying that that's what it was. That's what they were doing, but I do think it is a little bit fishy how he's decides to start a podcast and all of a sudden the guy he's starting a podcast with is now your head coach. Or going to be your head coach. Like, I mean, because it's not confirmed, but he is in the front running to be the head coach. So I find it a little odd. Like, there was definitely some talk of there involved, but I digress. With that, we are out of time for this second segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment where I talk about Angel Reese and her recent fine with, the WNBA, given how, I think the fine is crazy. I think the fine was, a little bit unnecessary, but we're going to talk about that as well as her impact on the WNBA and women's basketball. So I will be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we, well, that's one way to start off. And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC basketball podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I needed a long break because that sun was not kind. It was not kind to me, especially in this in this nice shirt that I'm wearing. It was very, very, very hot. So in this third segment, we're going to be talking about Angel Reese and her impact with the WNBA, as well as her recently getting fined in a game for cussing. So she was cussing up a little storm on the court, saying that's BS, this, that, and the other. Mainly it was that's BS, and she got fined for it. And obviously, like, you can't curse on national television, and it makes sense that you will get fined for these kinds of these kind of things. However, it does not necessarily help her reputation. Now, Angel Reese, she's a bit of a, how do I put this? Like, she's a wild card with some basketball fans and women's basketball fans as well. I mean, some people, like, they like her. Some people really don't like her. And a lot of the times it seems like it's black or white. Like, I'm not trying to talk about the skin color. I'm trying to talk about literally just, like, you either like her or you don't. But now that I mentioned that, at the same time, it also might have something to do with skin color. But I'm not going to get into that, but I'm just going to, point that out, because it does seem like a lot of the people that don't really support her are from, I'm not going to finish that sentence. You guys can connect the dots. But she's still very good, very popular in her own right, and she definitely deserves all the respect that she gets. And it's really, like, I honestly think it's a crime that anyone, tries to, like, blatantly disrespect her the way that a lot of people do. And a lot of it has to do with her attitude. Now, one of the biggest stipulations around women's sports, and one of the things that, like, in my opinion, made the sport unattractive to a lot of people that watch it, was some of these women that have attitude. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't really seem like a popular thing amongst the viewers. For some reason, whenever an NBA athlete has an attitude, they're seen as, like, dog. Like, that's just how it is. That's how he is. He's tough like that. Dog. Things like that. Especially when they talk all that smack, regardless of, like, who's in front of them. Like, they're going to talk their talk and they're going to walk their walk. However, whenever a female athlete does it, they get a completely different reaction from the rest of the media. This is sort of what the reaction would be. Well, I should point this way. This is sort of what the reaction would be with if a female athlete were to actively talk the way that she does, because a lot of people don't really like how she talks smack. They think it's labeled as let me just think of appropriate names. Like, oh, here we go. It's like thug. It's like a thug-like behavior that's what people are saying. That's not what I'm saying, but it seems like that's sort of like where a lot of people lean towards whenever the haters picture Angel Reese and the things that she says. And I don't really like that stipulation, because it's unfair for her. It's unfair for people like her, as well as it's just unfair for women athletes in general. I am a huge fan of the trash talking. Sometimes I think it's unprofessional. Like, there are times where I think, you go a little overboard, but the trash talking that she does, just being in people's face, getting all hyped and things like that, might be a little unprofessional, but it's like, yeah, that's how you play the sport. It's something that a fan can get excited about, I guess you could say. And I find it exciting. A lot of people that I know don't really like how she's portrayed and, like, what she does, like, on the media. She also says that she talks her talk, like, a lot, and she says that she deserves some of the, like, same attention that Caitlyn is getting, as, like, for putting women's sports on the map. Now, she's right, in my opinion, but at the same time, I don't really think that's something that needs to be said. Like, you saying it just sort of sounds like, again, you're just a little bit jealous of Caitlyn and her fame. And while it's reasonable to be jealous, especially like when you beat her in the postseason, I don't think you should really call that out. That's just me, but she does what she does, and she does it very well. So, another thing is that Lonzo is going to pay for the fine of Angel Reese, given how, the fine is ridiculous and WNBA contracts are not that ridiculous to pay for those fines. So, a lot of female athletes, they can't really afford to get that many fines in the WNBA, given their salary, which is unfair. But aside from that, there's, again, it's like her professionalism and the way that she talks around the media, and it's like obviously she demands respect, and I think she deserves the respect because there would be no Caitlin Clark if there was no Angel Reese. It's as simple as that. Like, Caitlin and Angel, they both participated in one of the most popular women's basketball finals and one of the most viewed women's basketball games in the history of the sport. And, like, regardless what side of the coin you would rather take, she was a part of that. And obviously, most of the people were rooting for Caitlin Clark because she's just, that talented. But Angel Reese was the one that ended up getting the ring in the end. And she was also the one that was stirring up the, not really the beef, but, a lot of, it gave media outlets something to cover because she did this. And ever since she did this, that's literally the only thing that she's been remembered for. Like, she did this in front of Caitlyn, like, as a form of taunting because, she was winning, and she deserved to do that because she was winning, and there's, like, literally no way around it. She was winning, and she ended up winning in the end. And that doesn't really get talked about as much as Caitlyn gets talked about because, like, I mean, these women are out here beating her and winning, yet here they are left in the dust, I guess you could say. Now, excuse me. Angel, she's embraced her villain role, as she said in another post-game interview with this guy. And obviously, like, I mean, her embracing that role, I feel like it was a necessity. Like, in any kind of league, you always need a villain. You always need that one person that everyone can just, gang up against because they all cannot either stand him or her. Like, it's been a thing in the NBA for, like, the longest time. It's like you're either for or against this particular person. It's been going on for, like, I want to say decades. I mean, let me think. How far along has this been going? I can't really name many 90s players that get... Actually, I do have one. The Bad Boy Pistons, the entire roster, you were either with them or you were either against them and how they played. And the entire league didn't like how they played, but, if you were in Detroit, you loved it because you were winning championships. And a more recent example, like, if we want to go by, like, particular, like, individual villains, LeBron. He is the easy pick for being the villain because in 2010, a lot of people were really, really upset at LeBron for his decision for joining Miami, and he was dubbed the villain for, like, the longest time. And once he returned to Cleveland, he was then labeled a savior. But here was the problem. The NBA was lacking somebody to despise. So they shifted it to Kevin Durant. And he's been, like, when he was on the Warriors, I guess you could say he was sort of public enemy number one. That Warriors team was, in fact, public enemy number one. Everybody, like, that was any other team despised the Warriors for that move. And they despised Kevin Durant for that move. Now, ever since Kevin Durant joined a completely different team, it seems like the league has now sort of shifted the dislike towards Rudy Gobert. That is actually literally the perfect example of someone who gets hated on for absolutely no reason. And a villain, well, not really a villain in the NBA. It's just someone he's just someone that nobody really likes. For some reason, not many people are really, oh, I'm a Rudy Gobert fan, and oh, I like Rudy Gobert. Most of the comments you get about Rudy Gobert are rather negative. So, the league always needs to have someone that, you can gang up and go against, and she's willing to be that person. I mean, now it seems like, it's more Dylan Brooks. Like, a lot of people, everyone cannot stand what Dylan Brooks has to say. And he's a big villain in the NBA. Not as popular, but, still, whenever he opens his mouth, he becomes very popular. And I mean, it's a similar role that Angel Reese is trying to, take up. And I genuinely, like, the WNBA needs this. They need this kind of, uh, storyline, so that way they can market their games a little bit better, as well as have, more to talk about with these games and have a lot of more people interested. Especially, like, because, I mean, if there's beef in any sport, that is going to generate any kind of attention. And if she's going to continue talking her talk as much as she does, I can guarantee you she's going to make a lot of headlines. So with that, we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where I talk about basketball players as volleyball players. Now, this was inspired by an athlete who recently joined the USA Olympics volleyball team. So I will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the excuse me, with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. In this fourth segment, we are going to talk about the Jazz announcing their new jerseys. No, I'm just playing, but like, that's literally, I just got an ESPN notification saying that the Jazz recently just announced their new jerseys. Go ahead and check them out. They look really, if you're nostalgic, you're really going to like how the Jazz logo looks now. It really looks like the original logo back when Stockton was playing, and you know who was playing. I'm not going to mention his name just because of reasons. And so, with that out of the way, we can, these allergies, we can go right ahead and talk about NBA players and volleyball. Now, the reason why this, I decided to do this segment is mainly because of this player right here. So his name is Chase Budinger. He played for the Houston Rockets, as you could see by the jersey. He played for Minnesota as well as Indiana and Phoenix. Now, judging by the amount of teams that he played for, I'm sure you guys can, properly assume that he sort of hopped from team to team. He averaged for his career 7 points per game, one assist, 3 rebounds. He's a small forward. He's 6'6". He's 6'7", and he shot 43% from the field, 35% from 3, and 79% from the line. So he had a pretty good career in the NBA. I mean, granted, he played all the way up until he was 28, which I mean, normally you'd ask to have a longer career, but he did end up going to play in another pro league in Spain. So he was obviously he was still playing basketball, just not at a high level like the NBA. Now, excuse me. On Wednesday, he clinched a spot in the Paris Olympics with Team USA in beach volleyball. So he's obviously, as I mentioned, he's a former Houston Rocket. He was teammates with Miles Evans. Oh wait, turns out Miles Evans, he also earned the spot for Team USA after passing Theo Brunner and Trevor Crabb in the international rankings last month. So I actually didn't know about this. Like, I'm literally just like looking at this article now. I just saw the headline and I was thinking, this sort of reminds me of someone. But I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of this before I get into that. So so this accomplishment, it apparently, like, it's been a long time coming for Budinger, according to this article. He put down basketball in favor of volleyball in 2017, and he'd played 7 years in the NBA and 1 year of professional ball overseas before opting to take his career in a new direction. So he grew up playing beach volleyball with his brother and was a decorated indoor player in high school as well. He won three state titles and earned Mizuno's National Player of the Year award from Volleyball Magazine when he was a senior at La Costa Canyon High School in California. So he was really good at volleyball, and he received college scholarship offers for volleyball, but Budinger opted to play basketball for Arizona instead, while keeping his backup option in the back of his mind. I decided to see how far basketball could take me, Budinger said in 2018. But in the back of my mind, I knew I could always go back to volleyball after I was done with basketball. So it seemed like he already had a plan with, where his career would go after he was done with basketball. Budinger played with multiple teammates before finding his match in Miles Evans last year. The duo is now the number 2 ranked team in the U.S. and the number 13 team in the world. And Team USA beach volleyball only sends 2 teams of each gender to the Olympics, making it one of the toughest sports to qualify for. And when their team hits the court in Paris, Budinger will be the first athlete to play in both an NBA regular season game and an Olympic beach volleyball match. Now, the former Lakers star Keith Erickson had a similar career path, but in reverse. So Erickson first played for Team USA indoor team in '64 before going to play 12 seasons in the NBA. So it would seem like a lot of, NBA players, they could fall back. They could also be really elite at volleyball. And it literally reminded me of Wilt Chamberlain. Now, I'm sure you guys are wondering, how could you be reminded of Wilt Chamberlain? He didn't even exist in your time. And that is true, but I was reminded of the fact that he did play volleyball and he was inducted in the Volleyball Hall of Fame. He had a really short career playing volleyball in a league that didn't really last that long. I believe it was called let me actually find the name of it. Like the International Volleyball Association or something like that. I'm just going to make sure that I have the International Volleyball Association, the IVA. He played for, after he was done with basketball, he played volleyball with in that league, and he also served as the league president at one point. So obviously, having someone as ridiculously athletic as Wilt on your team is just one of the ultimate cheat codes you could have in basketball. So him playing volleyball just sounds even more ridiculous, because volleyball, it's one of those sports where I might not be well versed in professional volleyball, but my college does have a women's volleyball team. They're really good. I watch them every single time. I'm friends with all of them on the team. They're really nice. They're really nice people, and the sport is also really fun. And I get the rules and I understand the basis of volleyball a lot better now that I watch them play, and I can input it into this. So Wilt, obviously he's ridiculously tall and his vertical is insane. So it's having someone that tall and that strong with that much bounce in their legs is literally it's cheating, because especially at this time, he's so much more athletic than everyone else. Look at all them short shorts. He's so much more athletic than the next guy up that it's he can jump higher, he can spike the ball harder, and a lot of the at least on the men's side, a lot of the times the round usually ends after one of the players spikes the ball because the ball moves so fast. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but having him on the defense as well is a really good plus, because you need that sort of tall player at the front to be able to get blocks and prevent the ball from going over on the other side and hitting inbounds and things like that. And it's like having someone that's tall is a lot easier than having somebody that's a little bit shorter, which was a problem for our volleyball team. It was like the height difference. And when you think about it, a lot of these NBA players, they would be very, very well suited to play professional volleyball because they have the height, they have the endurance, because they're constantly running back and forth on an NBA court. So simming that down to volleyball, it's like, because there's breaks within every single set, and a lot more breaks than with basketball where you're constantly running back and forth, and the only time you have to relax is either if you are resting on offense, sitting in a corner, or if you have a timeout. But those rest moments are few and far in between. Not as much as the sets are in volleyball, because it's like every time you have a set, you can take a bit of a breather. So you're never really out of stamina. And at least when compared to NBA players and how they have to handle their stamina. So that, on with the stamina being handled on top of their height, on top of being really fast on the floor, as well as being really athletic individually, I see no reason why NBA athletes can't participate in these high level volleyball games, given their ridiculous height. I mean, imagine a center that's let me think of because there's got to be one. Imagine Victor, playing volleyball. He wouldn't even have to jump to get over the net. All he has to do is just do this, and boom, he gets every single block. It sounds crazy. I just imagine how good they would be and how many basketball players could be in the Volleyball Hall of Fame if they pursued that towards the end of their career. It was just something that I wanted to talk about. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that basketball players could make some of the best volleyball players? Do you guys think that Wilt was just a crazy phenomenon and he was one of the few X factors and acceptors in this rule where it's he could play multiple sports? He's just that much of a crazy legend at this point. I mean, in my eyes, he was a legend. He's a myth. He's definitely, because the things that he does, the records that he holds, it seems so impossible now. It's difficult to imagine that it was possible back then. And on top of that, there are no stories and no real concrete evidence about that. We have stories, but there's no real concrete evidence because there were no cameras, or not as much cameras on him at the time. And in my eyes, granted, especially since I wasn't born at that time, I see him as a myth because the records that he holds, the numbers that he puts up, the things that he does, his accolades, all of that, it just seems a little bit it just doesn't seem real. Now, obviously, that when you look at the playoffs, he looks a little bit more human than usual, but most of the time that's not really the case. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think a lot of NBA players could be good volleyball players, or do you think it's just Wilt? So that's all I have on this segment. So now we will go ahead and go into the special fifth segment where I have an interesting topic of conversation. This is going to be a much shorter segment than the other ones because there's not really much to talk about. It's really just asking for some of your opinions and me giving some of mine. And they're about Derek Lively or Kristaps Porzingis. I saw this on an Instagram post. People were, and on Twitter, they were actually talking about Lively or Kristaps, which one they would prefer to be on their team. And I will be right back after this short break to talk a little bit more about that. So be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fifth segment, we are going to talk about Derek Lively and Kristaps Porzingis. Now, why talk about this? Well, recently, like I said before, I saw on an Instagram post and on Twitter how there was actual conversation about who they would rather have as a big man and why. And, well, not really why. It's more so who they would have. And for some reason, a lot of people are saying that Lively is better than Kristaps. And as someone who used to play for the Knicks, and, me being a New York fan, despite the fact that he is on Boston, I will not tolerate such talk towards the unicorn whatsoever. Now, the man Kristaps is ridiculous. Like, he is a freak of nature. A lot of people forget that he is 7'3". He can shoot. And, being 7'3" means you're already good at defending the rim because you're that tall. So having somebody that can space the floor, either run a pick and roll, play defense for you, is already a far more versatile player than what Lively is. And in my opinion, I don't think Derek Lively would be where he is if it wasn't for the brilliance of Luka and Kyrie Irving. I mean, if you look at the career numbers, I'm just pulling them up right now, it's not even close. Like, why is this a debate? I don't know, but I definitely wanted to talk about this because I think it's absolutely egregious because, like, the way that these narratives, like, the way that they keep changing and the way that they always keep getting brought up come playoff time and, like, the way that revisionist history works is ridiculous to me because, like, obviously, like, Lively, he's a rookie, and he literally just started his NBA career, and he's in the finals, which is impressive. In the postseason, he's averaged 8 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, and how many blocks? 1 block per game. Meanwhile, Kristaps, in this postseason, he only played 4 games, so it's not really fair. But in those 4 games, he averaged 12 points, 1 assist, 5 rebounds, and 1.5 blocks per game. So it's like roughly somewhat the same. And I mean, granted, Kristaps' stats, they could definitely be a lot better, but I don't really give him that sort of slander, especially since he only played 4 games in the playoffs. And having just those 4 games to judge him would just be unfair. So I'd rather judge by, the experience that they have and the impact that they bring to the team. And I feel like the Mavericks, they would be just as fine with any other center that wasn't him. I'm sorry to say it, but it's like, I feel like Kristaps, he brings a lot more value to the Boston Celtics than what a lot of people realize. And it seems, I genuinely think it's just a bunch of people just disliking the Celtics because they are like one of the most disliked franchises, especially when they make it to the finals. It's like, and they're also one of the most disrespected franchises. Like, I mean, a lot of fans don't really have that high respect for a team like the one that they have assembled. And again, a lot of the backlash and a lot of the media, it sort of portrays Boston as the bad guy, and it seems like, a lot of people are going to be rooting for Dallas more than they're going to be rooting for Boston. Like, a lot of media outlets are saying it's the world against Boston in these finals, and some part of it is true, but at the same time, I feel like some of these takes that a lot of these people are coming up with now is egregious. Like, another thing that was brought up recently was Kristaps' relationship with Luka, like how now all of a sudden there was beef between the two when there wasn't while they were on the team. And Luka spoke up about this in an article. I'm looking at it right over here because one former Dallas player thinks more should be made about the actual beef that Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis have. And Doncic, he insists that there is absolutely zero beef between the two of them. Now, you could believe a teammate, or you could believe Luka. It doesn't matter what side you believe, because at the end, we have no idea who's telling the truth. We don't know if the former teammate is just trying to stir up the pot, or if Luka is trying to just either withhold that information because it is locker room information. Or it might just be like, Luka's telling the truth and he's just stirring up the pot and just saying things that could start a debate, I guess you could say. Because Luka, he doesn't really seem like the type of guy that would have that kind of beef with his teammates. And on top of that, it's completely out of character, especially like, I don't see how that wasn't a headline while they were playing on the team. It seemed like this narrative was sort of like, it was just brought up out of the blue. And that's what a lot of these outlets have been doing recently. Now, with this comparison coming out of the blue, coming in from like, all of Twitter and the media, I was just appalled and I had to bring it up because it's like, how are you going to say that Lively is better than Kristaps? I don't see it whatsoever. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys think that Kristaps is better than Lively, or do you think Lively is better? Because when I look at their season stats, like just their stats in the regular season, Kristaps averaged 20 points per game, and he averaged almost 2 blocks along with 7 rebounds. So when he gets those minutes and he plays those minutes, he puts up really good numbers, and they're like honestly some of the best numbers that you could ask from a big man compared to someone who is scoring only 8 points in the regular season. Like, I feel like that is a very huge gap in points and production and efficiency and, just how valuable a player could be. And, like, the playoffs has sort of just implemented a lot of recency bias to a lot of these fans. And combine that with the dislike towards Boston, it makes a little bit of sense why this debate is even a thing. But I don't really, at least make it a good one. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. So with that, that is all I have for this show. So thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show. It makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. That is all I have for you today. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's
go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the